Good morning, everybody. We call this meeting to order. This is the Public Transport Committee of the Bay of Plenty Regional Council. Just to remind everybody that members and staff that the public section of this committee is being live streamed and recorded, and the recordings will be made available on the Bay of Plenty Regional Council website following the meeting. I also remind all present that local government decision-making affords no protection to councillors, council officers, and the public for comments made during the meetings that are subsequently challenged in the court of law and determined to be slanderous. Health and safety. Just a reminder that there's if there is an emergency, the evacuation meeting spot is on the other side of the road outside this building. We all know where the toilets are, I think. Can you please make sure your phones are switched to at least either off or on silent, please? So we move straight on to apologies. The apologies I've received so far is Wakakotari Jess Andrews. So Sarah Roberts, morning Sarah, is sitting in for her. Wakatani District Council, Andrew Isles. Gavin, you're standing in for him. Thank you. On Zoom, we have Councillors Thurston and Thompson. We have Commissioner Selwood, Mayor Tapsell, and Councillor O'Brien. Public forum, there is none today. I need those apologies moved and seconded. Moved by Councillor Nee, seconded by Mayor Denia. All in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Public forum, there is none. Items not on the agenda, there is none. Order of business, there's no change. Are there any declarations of conflicts of interest? There are none recorded. Is there any public excluded business to be transferred to the open? No, there isn't. And we go straight on to the confirmation of minutes on page, what page? Page 8 of the agenda. Would someone move their true and correct record, first of all? Mayor Denia, seconded Malcolm. Thank you. It's amazing how you. Yeah, it's an age, you're right. Okay, so all in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Any matters arising out of the minutes? There appear to be none. So we moved straight on to the presentation of the Public Transport Arataki performance report for the first quarter. And it's going to be Stuart, I think. Stuart, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Morena tatou. This report covers performance monitoring for the 1st July 23 to the 30th of September 23. Patronage summary, quarter for 30th of September, 818,000 boardings, up 20.9% on previous year. This has been a real positive patronage increase across all networks in the Bay of Plenty region. It's also in line with other regions, and you can see the uptake in all those areas. Urban year-on-year growth trends, good patronage again year-on-year, reflecting growing positive mindset towards taking public transport, and I guess to an extent necessity as well. Accessible transport, this relates to page 30 of the agenda. 29,635 accessibility concession trips taken, which is an increase of 14% on the last quarter, which is significant. 89 applications processed and accepted during the quarter, and 1,777 applications accepted since go live on 1st of July 2021. This is an area that our team is still very proactive with and seems to be gaining patronage and popularity.
Do you want to take questions as we go through, or?
You're
At
very
the
happy.
end.
Yes, very happy to, Chair.
So I've just got a question going back to the total mobility figures. There is a huge increase in costs for that service. Patronage is up. I think it's up 28%, but the cost, total cost, appears to be up 157% on the year before. That's fine. We're obviously getting better patronage, but the cost of the service has gone, appears to me to have gone from what was over the last 5 years, sort of $6.73 per trip, to $11.60 in 22 and $16.81 in 22-23. So I'd just like staff to actually have a close look at that and put a specific report back on that to the next meeting of this, if you could. I'm not saying there's anything wrong. It's actually good that we're getting our patronage up, but we just, is the service being used for what it was designed for, is my question. I'm going to go for Councillor Thurston, followed by Councillor Shirley. Councillor Thurston.
Chairman, I gather you're taking comments about the whole report at this point, or are you specifically just talking about patronage and?
But at this stage, Stuart has just got through, so I just took up while he was at total mobility. That was all.
Can
So
I just
don't go ahead.
I'd just like to make a comment about patronage. I think in this quarter we are seeing the results of the Community Connect government initiative, and whilst we have been self-flagellating for years about public transport, I think on this occasion we can actually pat it on the back, because when you look at the statistics here, Tauranga is, up 21%, Rotorua is up 18%, the Eastern Bay is up 21%, and I think we have to acknowledge that. And whilst I know there's a move afoot to revisit it by politicians, our commitment to a lot of these initiatives, I think this is an opportunity for us to actually self-congratulate the powers that be that have made these huge increases in percentage growth in the last quarter. So no, that's all I wanted. But if I can also comment on total mobility, as you know, I've had a personal interest in this for many, many years because of the lived experience. I would just like to think, Chairman, I fully commend you for calling for a report on this. But as I've reminded everyone, the disability sector is a growing industry or growing community group. 1 in 5 in the Bay of Plenty identify with a profound disability, which in many cases precludes them from using public transport. So this is what total mobility was initiated for. But I would like to think at the end of the day, after the report has been tabled that you are requesting, that we would satisfactorily come to the conclusion that we were actually meeting need, not want. So they are the two comments I wanted to make about patronage and total mobility. Thank you, Chairman.
Your comments are noted, Councillor Shirley and then Councillor Lees.
Thank you, Chairman. On the same vein from Councillor Thurston's comments, I note in Q1 there was 89 new applications processed and accepted. My question is, how many applications were declined?
I can't answer that, Sir. I can find out. I do know that there is a rigorous process that people go through when they apply for these services. Somebody making sure that they meet the eligibility criteria. And while I have that information there as to what's been accepted, I don't have the other information. I can obtain it though.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just further to the answer, the eligibility criteria we circulated to councillors after the workshop and the LTP conversations. So it's a fairly black and white set of eligibility. You either qualify or you don't. Once you do qualify, you are eligible for the scheme. So I guess it's less of a decline and more of a you are either on that scheme or you're not. So that's the mechanism by which we do things.
I guess it'd be useful to know though how many do not meet the criteria of the application, because along with Councillor Thurston, this is a very important part of total mobility, and it really will give us an indication of the level of those who might try to sort of game it. It's sort of need not want. It must be always need not want. And that the only measure for that really would be how many are applying that don't qualify, and we don't know.
Absolutely take your point. I think we can get that number. I think just to hark back to things like free fares and the concessions and the scheme in terms of the government subsidy, what it's done is made the service more attractive. So the people using and who are eligible for the service now are able to use it more, just with the same amount of money they had last time. So I guess that's one of the reasons why I think we're experiencing some demand and an uptick in demand. People coming into the scheme, I think, we'll have a look at that just to see whether that's a trend that's on the uptick as well, because I think that would be important to know whether there are people meeting that criteria that haven't been previously using the service. Because I think those are new customers, which are what the scheme is for. But how much our existing customers use the scheme, I think is something we would want to drill into, understand why that's happening and so on. I think we took an action to go and have a look at that.
Could I ask just an extension of that? Is I think it's $47, is it a trip or per day is the maximum?
Sorry, I don't know that off the top
Because
of my head.
my other question was that, people, how, they could do sort of 3 or 4 trips, go to the supermarket and just, there's free taxis everywhere.
There is
all
definitely,
day if it was on a trip basis.
there's definitely an upper limit. I don't know if it's 47 or 42
Is that per day though or per trip?
per day.
Per day. Right.
I think that's why we just need a fuller report on it for the next meeting. I move now to Councillor Neves, followed by Commissioner Selwood.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not quite sure whether this is the right time to ask this question or not, or whether we're going to do a deeper dive into the individual networks. But my question was relating to page 22, where it mentions that Tauranga Urban Bus Services has moved from a weekend timetable to 96% of the full timetable on the 1st of May 2023. And it says there's still 4 routes remaining on the weekend timetable. And my question is, which routes and why, and when or if do we expect to go back to the full timetable?
Happy to take that, Stuart. So I'll get the names of the routes in one moment. What we've done is, as part of the Tauranga refresh, we had reserved those 4 routes to be addressed through that refresh. There was more work to do in those routes in terms of making them more efficient. So patronage wasn't the greatest, and we needed to change them. So we folded into the refresh. But as you well know, we stopped that project. So now we are looking at those routes as what are the things that we can do to improve it in terms of reliability. And I'll get you the names in 1 second. And we'll be folding that through into the new refresh either next year or doing something in between. So they are still work on. So we have to go and have a look at those and see what the right service is for those customers. At this stage, just folding them straight back to full timetable isn't the best outcome for both our customers and for our service.
So how do we know that we're not disadvantaging people because they are not able to take the buses that they want, that they used to take before we put them onto the weekend timetable?
I think almost certainly we are. It is harder for people on those routes to catch the bus. So we are at the moment not providing what they had before. The reasons they have been isolated is because we didn't get a very strong demand. So to match the service to that demand would probably mean we'd do it less. We just aren't able to get a guarantee from our operator and from our network that we can actually work that and make that work with our bus routes, our drivers and whatnot. So there's a bit of work to be done on making sure that whatever version of the service we have on those routes is matching that customer base. But it's very possible that there are customers there who used the service before who no longer can. So we're still holding on to some pain in that area.
I just hope that we address it sooner than 2 years out. That in fact, if we can ascertain what level of service is actually needed, that we actually adjust it appropriately, because if we've got the capacity to run a service, I'd like to know that we were doing that and not just keeping it on a weekend service because we didn't do the refresh.
Through you, Mr. Chair, last thing about that is they're absolutely a priority. We haven't fixed them, so we need to go back and do that. I think all going well with LTP conversations, will be ready to do that sooner rather than, certainly not 2 years away. So they'll be first kept off the rank in terms of review. We don't want our customers holding on to that weekend timetable for as long as we can. So if we can do that even before Christmas, we would. But I think you'll find that it'll be the new year before we got to it. Just the numbers on that service.
Yeah.
The 1, the 72A, 72B, and 62. So Greerton, Otamotai, Bethlehem, and one that hasn't quite come through yet.
All right, the batting order we have is Commissioner Selwood, Councillor Thompson, Councillor Thurston. Commissioner Selwood.
Thank you, Chair. And just sort of following the theme of quite a few of the queries, I've lost track of where we are at in terms of optimization of our service network. I know that the refresh has been put on hold. I'm not 100% clear of the reasoning for that. And I know that we've been doing a lot of work around improving our data information coming through. I'm keen to understand how we can optimize the network routes by frequency, the number of passengers per ride in a bus, bus occupancy, all of that data, so that we can really maximize the efficiency of the services that we've got, particularly in the world that we have where costs are constantly rising. Effective use of our network is probably a key responsibility. So I just wonder if, Chair, through you, I could inquire what the plan is and the timeline. I find these reports always interesting, and it's fantastic to see patronage is going up. But I think this kind of reporting format would be very helpful if we were also diving deeper in terms of routes, cost per passenger, all of that sort of data, which would really get us under the bonnet of the operating system.
Happy to take that. Great questions, Commissioner Selwood. So just going from the beginning, in terms of the way that we optimise the network, as your words, there's two sort of levels of change that we do, which is a level which is we don't need any delegated authority, it doesn't cost any more money, and we go out and we change it. If we get agreement from our operators and we can balance the system within the system, we generally do that as a staff reaction to customer feedback mostly. So wherever we get a swathe of customer feedback that we need to change things, and we can do that within budget and without too much disruption, that we do that as a matter of course. So there's tweaks and adjustments there, but bear in mind that some of the things like printing new timetables and reviewing those things, those are the constraints to change, is that we're just having public information out there and making sure that our public know what's going on. That creates the timeline for change. So those optimization measures, they can get through in sort of 3 to 6 months. I'm using loose and fancy free timelines here, but they're relatively quicker. Things like a refresh, which is more of a network-wide approach, takes a lot more balancing, takes a lot more coordination and collaboration with our supplier. It affects bus driver hours. It affects the networks. We can make one change in one area. It's like the game of whack-a-mole, and it pops up on the other area over here as a problem. So there's more balancing involved in that. So we're trying to strike that balance between how much optimization we do before we get to a major network refresh. For Tauranga, we've reprogrammed the Tauranga refresh to happen in the first half of next year. All going well, and that we get through our LTP conversations and our program of activity is approved through our process, we can move to that relatively quickly. We are going to divide it off in smaller chunks, because I think the Tauranga network refresh was a big bang effort, and we can make them smaller changes more often, I think more readily, i.e. with our communities, with our network and our suppliers, than we can with big changes. So that's the sort of strategy going forward, and we expect to be into the next version of that in the first year of the NLTP, which is not the next 6 months, it's after June next year. So that's what we're planning at the moment. In between times, between now and June next year, we can do the optimization type activities with the sort of the routes that we just mentioned, and do the tweaks that we're looking at. So that's the plan. As to the data, we have a plethora of data. Some of it's good, some of it's loose, because we manually collect information as well as from an automated way through our RITS machines. In the urban network, we've got a much richer data set because people use B cards, but where we don't use B cards, the data is less refined. So when you talk about things like cost per passenger, it is a number we can generate, but how reliable is that number? And I think we can give you a sense of those things, but again, much like all statistics and lies and all that sort of expression, is that we've just got to be careful with that information. So coming back to it, we can provide you with the data that you need. We need to get a sense of what that is. We've provided you with a summary report of a wider picture. Any drill down from here, we would want to see some feedback from this committee around what are those areas that we need. Very last thing is we do have a Power BI dashboard that you're able to access, and I know that our chair accesses it all the time, and you can drill into some of those information, but let us know what that looks like and we'll make sure that we can verify that, and we're happy to stand behind the number, I think is the key part. So more than happy to take the feedback on that, and if we're heading towards a price per passenger, we'll just have to look at the veracity of that information. It might be very accurate for a Tauranga urban network, but it may not be as accurate for, say, a regional service or something like that.
Thanks, Mike. And look, I think that to me is a key long-term goal of understanding cost per passenger, obviously by route. And you can really start to, drive value for money. And I do appreciate linking financial data with patronage data is problematic and difficult, but I would suggest to the committee that is a very worthwhile piece of knowledge that would be worth turning attention to. And then I think the other one for me is patronage per bus. So, if you've got whatever it is, a 30, 40, 50 seater, but you're only filling 3 or 4 seats out of it on every trip, then obviously, your capacity utilization is quite weak. So, and that's typically the sort of anecdote that you hear, and I don't know how valid it is. Certainly there'll be routes where those numbers are true, and there'll be many routes I expect where they're completely false. But understanding those two key metrics, I think, would be helpful, that we were in a position in time to have a regular kind of report or a regular update included in this report that we receive. So those are just my thoughts. I'd be interested in the views of others. I did have one request, Chair, if I may, while I've got the floor, as I was looking at the appendix on page 32 of our agenda, appendix 2, and it lists out all of the routes by number. And I wonder if it would be possible to have that table add the route names. I was able to go back to a previous table and match them up, but I quite often find the reporting refers to the route number, which, pardon my ignorance, but I don't know many of the routes. So some names would be very helpful if that could be achieved. That was all. Thank you, Chair.
Just a quick response. Yep, happy to have the names. I actually asked for the names as well because I don't know all the names off by heart either. Just in terms of utilisation, the kind of key metrics we need to make sure we operate services around reliability of the service. That goes straight to the service we're offering. So punctuality is a almost sort of a triangulation metric that we can use to help understand whether the bus is arriving at the right bus stop on time. Utilisation, again, that's patronage on the bus. That's something we can actually put into this report fairly quickly. And then in terms of the number of passengers per trips, we can absolutely give that, but I think you'll start to find that on this part of the report, there'll be some caveats listed down the side around how we can use that information, but it's still useful to understand what's going on. So we're more than happy to provide that as another sort of window into the data. And we'll keep working on that based on the feedback we get from this meeting.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you. We move to councillor Thompson, followed by councillor Thurston.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I have one comment and two questions. My comment would be $47 a day for a lot of people wouldn't cover the cost of return trips to hospital, specialist health services, social services, etc. So my question that follows up from that is I need to be clear about the terms of reference or the scope of the further report that has been requested. So I'd like to have a better understanding of exactly what it is that we're trying to ascertain here in terms of total mobility. First question. Second question, having been very involved with Councillor Thurston in public engagement over routes 72A, 72B and 62, particularly given the number of aged residencies and older housing, etc., what consultation and engagement has been done in terms of a change to those routes? So two questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Happy to answer the second question. In terms of the consultation, so during the Tauranga refresh, we went out and consulted with the community about their needs with those routes. We still have that information and feedback, and that's the feedback that we're going to use in order to redesign those routes. So that's it is a month or two old now, and by the time we get to doing the change, it might be 4 to 6 months down the line. So I think without making a commitment about the project team's consultation phase, we will be doing a bit of a check-in on that information from that Tauranga refresh. So we'll be doing it again, but more than likely in a lighter touch kind of way to confirm the results of that consultation earlier. In the Tauranga refresh, all that consultation information will be using as good fodder for the design of the networks going forward. It isn't wasted, and it is something that we're looking to fold into the new one. I think primarily the reason for that delay is the costs that we got coming back over the counter with the refresh itself. I think the feedback we get is still the same, the customer need is still there around those things. So we'll be looking at how that affects the way we design those particular services. So those will be the kind of ones that we'd like to do in the next 6 months, because we have the feedback. We can recast our budgets and we can put something on the ground in a shorter order. Unfortunately, I just think the Christmas period is a diabolical time to do those type of change. So it's likely to be next year.
Mike, if I may, the point I was really trying to make about those particular routes is that a very generalised feedback process doesn't necessarily address the specific needs that those communities may have in particular. You may well find that a lot of the consumers or customers simply wouldn't be engaging with a participate or whatever kind of engagement process. So that's all I'm really trying to say. Communities, horses for courses in terms of services. And yeah, my other question, I guess, directed to the chairman is the scope of the further report that's being requested around total mobility. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Thompson. My concern, and it is a generalised, I just wanted to see a full report back, just recognising that in the last 12 months, the total mobility has doubled in price as a cost to council. And we saw that in our audit and risk with the cost of taxis being at around 1.5 million, and the majority of that was actually total mobility. At the same time, in the last 12 months, the cost per trip has gone from 11.60 to close to $18. So all I'm looking for is just I don't want a forensic report audit, but I just think the cost structure does bear a bit of examination to make sure that everything's that we understand what we're paying for and what we're getting. That's all. And if you would like, we can put that as a resolution. I'm happy to move it as a resolution to come back to the next meeting. If that's your preferred course to get that.
Chairman, can I just sorry, Councillor Thompson, can I just urge us to refer to it as an analysis, not a review? I think that's what I'm asking for. I want an analysis of total mobility, not an extensive review. But Chairman, having said that, can I just urge Michael and the team to pull on the resources of Carol Gordon, because my gut feeling is that a lot of this will be as a consequence of our ageing population that is growing at a huge rate, and particularly in the Western Bay. So I would urge Michael, you and the staff to pull on the resources and the research, and it's extensive, as we all know, that Carol Gordon has done with regards ageing populations and the growth of in the Western Bay. But please, when you put the recommendation, can you just urge that you staff to do an analysis, not a review? That's my feeling. Thank you.
And just following up on that, I want to see a balanced analysis, not just cost, but benefit. So let's have a look at, the enhanced level of well-being that we're providing to our communities. Quite how you price that would be an interesting exercise, but it should be a balanced analysis and not look as though we're just simply focusing on cost without benefit. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
I think staff heard you loudly and clearly. Councillor Thurston, is that all you wanted to say, or do you have further?
That's all I wanted to say, just to ensure that we're asking for an analysis, not a review, and to pull on the research of Carol Gordon. I think that would short-circuit this whole process.
All right, Councillor Dennis.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I'd just
Speaker on, please.
Thank you. I'd just like to ask through you, Mr. Chair, is those figures on our page number 30 on our agenda on the bottom left-hand side, talks about total mobility patronage by area. It's lovely to see Tauranga and Rotorua heading for the clouds, but Whakatani's heading for the ground. I was just wondering if there's a reason for that as part of your collection of the data.
I couldn't give a reason for that, but what I can say is that we have our team that attend to total mobility and accessible services are based in Eastern Bay of Plenty, Whakatane, and they have been proactive in meetings and messaging within the older community with various groups to really send the messages around what is available and what they can access. And these were really positively received. In fact, one of them happened in the last month, which was well reported on. So we remain very agile in that space and encouraging the public to utilise these services. If they don't know about the services, then they won't seek them out. So we try to increase the amount of knowledge that we make available, and the team based down there do a good job in that respect. There's always opportunities to improve. There's always opportunities to get that message out further.
Just one more, Mr. Chair. I notice it's almost half from what it used to be for the previous 3 quarters, and so obviously those people knew about it. I was just wondering if your team in that area would be able to look at what effect the Waka Eastern Bay group is doing, because they're obviously really starting to fire up and do a lot of transporting for people. Up here to the hospital where the health shuttle's full, they actually make up the difference. And I'm really be interested to see if that group is starting to affect your total numbers from Whakatane, which would be a really good thing.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think there's two answers to your question. One is one of our operators was not very well in Whakatane, and so that might be part of the reason. The other element is that I think this committee had a view on a community transport forum earlier in a previous meeting, and I think the intent there is to work with that group pretty closely on structure and things like that. That is still in its infancy as an idea, but I think those sorts of services provided for the community and by the community are excellent responses to those sorts of need. And if it does end up cannibalising the total mobility service, then it's probably a better place for communities to look after themselves and their well-being. So that community transport forum is a way of figuring out how do we work together and how do we make sure that we're being efficient with the overall resources that we're using. That hasn't happened yet, but it's certainly our intent to increase, to improve that relationship and make sure that we're on the same page.
So that's the Waka Eastern Bay group that Andrew Isles reported on last time.
Absolutely, and I think part of it was very useful to have that presentation come in here because we were thinking about some of the things at the same time, and it's a natural partnership for us to be involved in. So we don't have anything concrete yet, but we are certainly intending to make sure we tie it up together.
Stuart, thank you.
Customer experience, out of the 4,771 public transport related tickets raised, 8.2% relate to timetable queries. Of this, 29% relate to reliability caused by traffic congestion and roadworks. That's been a continuing theme for a period now. You can also see that for Q1, Tauranga Urban Network had an estimated 74,084 scheduled trips, of which missed trips were 2,104 or 2.8%. The top 5 routes where missed trips relating to traffic were in Tauranga region, with 4 of the routes travelling through the city and 1 from the city to Mountain Bay Fair, and these routes were Route 55, which is Ohoiti, Toiovamai, Greaton Hospital through to Tauranga City, Welcome Bay, which is Route 40 to Tauranga City, Bay Fair, Mount Maunganui to Tauranga City, and Route 1 Pies Bar, Greaton Fraser Cove to Tauranga City, and Route 60 Cambridge Heights. In respect to use of the B card, and I don't think this is reported or shown in the agenda, still remains an uptake in the use of the B card, which is something that we'd like to see, and you can see with the senior cohort, 87% of seniors using B card, which is very positive, and just showing that ability to want to use public transport and also want to utilise that service as well. And the Rotorua Urban B card versus cash again is outlined as well. You can see the high usage by our seniors in that regard as well. So for our financial performance, the full year total operating surplus variance is 171,000 favourable, made up of operating revenue 0.14 million lower than budget, slightly offset by operating expenditure 0.31 million lower than budget. The reasons outlined in the slides, and Waka Kotahi indexation rates used for operator contract payments, showing the actual or indexation and what is forecast as well. And just be aware that it won't be in the full document, but the right-hand portion of that chart where it says forecast says actuals in the full document. It should read forecast, so in future that will be amended so it reads forecast, how we're going moving forward.
Councillor Nees.
Thank you. Just the B card data if you could back the slide back, Claudia, the tertiary have only got 30% using the B card. I think we've talked about this before. That is very low. Could it be a criteria that free travel for tertiary students not be provided unless they have a B card?
Well, sorry, through you, Mr. Chair, just the tertiary services are still on a trial. And when we convert those things from trial to operationalise them, we would put RITS machines in. Unfortunately, we're in this quandary of a space where we've got a new ETS system coming in, and we're unlikely to invest in more RITS machines. It's bad. There are potential solutions, but they are more of a long bow than they are a reality. So at the moment, those services will just want to have a B card going forward. So if we didn't have that NTS project in our horizon, we would be looking to put RIS machines, converting trials into operational services, and then putting RIS machines in livery and all that sort of good stuff around them. But at the moment, that's where the tertiary services sit.
So what you're telling me is that they're not using the B card because they can't.
Because they can't, and only one service has a machine.
Councillor Thompson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I wonder if, in terms of the reliability issues, whether staff could comment on the appropriateness of a discussion / report / analysis going to the Tauranga Joint PT Committee on the impacts of trying to run a reliable, efficient network given Tauranga's congestion and road disruption issues. I personally think it's a wicked problem, and I do think that there needs to be some discussion in terms of just what these impacts are and how we may or may not deal with them. So I don't know whether it's appropriate, Mr. Chair, to put that on the table as potentially an issue that needs to be further discussed at the Tauranga Joint PT Committee. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Through you, Mr. Chair. The reason I've paused is it is a bit of the dark arts of transport modelling and engineering and a mix of planning in between. I guess that it's a very difficult problem to provide a high level of analysis and understanding. However, one thing we do have is the data that's available to us, we can actually assess and understand that how much of the delays and the reliability of our service is related to congestion, and we've got that information in front of you today. We also know where that is happening. I think the response to this as an issue, and this comes from some experience of mine from other areas, for example in Wellington, is that it's more of a procedural response in terms of an operational environment. So what do I mean by that? Every day, every week, every month, the way that this transport system performs is different. It is a bit like lightning. You don't know quite what's going to happen, but overall you can figure out what you're doing. But day to day, it is the things that are unexpected. And so what you do in an operational context is you treat that on a day-to-day basis, but you have to set up processes and procedures and relationships and partnerships to do that. So for example, we'd need to know when there was a crash, we'd need to know when there were work happening on corridors, we'd need to know the things that impact the transport system as much in advance as we can, plan around that. But then even on the day, things happen, and there needs to be quite a strong communication lines between all the operators and the customers who are using the transport system in order to adjust it on the fly. So that's one part of it. And then the other element to that is the longer term planning elements, which is, are those areas that are continuously being delayed or we're having reliability issues, are there infrastructure projects or relief coming? You know, are there adjustments to intersections? Are there lanes being provided? Are there other elements that can help our buses be better at what they do? And I think that is the width and the breadth and the width of the challenge. And I'm not sure an analysis would be the best way to show that. However, in responding to your concerns, I think one of the elements we could do is work with Tauranga City Council and Western Bay on a bit of an update around the reliability of the whole transport system. Whakaputahi's involved in this. They do a predictability analysis, I think, which is already done, and that might be good, useful context in this report. We can just pop it in there to give you a sense of how the system's working. So you've got the reliability of the service, you've got system performance looks like that. I hope you can all see my hands. And then you can do this sort of re-reckoning around, actually, we're not doing too badly because there's 48 work sites open, or things like that. I think that's useful. Any deeper than that, then you get into the dark arts of modelling, and yeah, it's very difficult to really get some proper evidence out of it. I hope that answers your question. I'm kind of putting off the idea a little bit, but I'm happy to provide a system performance view if it exists and when it exists from our partners, because they're the ones who own actually the infrastructure that happens on.
So I see Commissioner Selwood's about to speak, so I shall wait and listen to his wisdom and then potentially have another little crack. Thank you.
Commissioner.
Thank you. And I think Mike has summed up the challenges and the issues very well. I'd like to think that we do have a very strong relationship between the two councils in terms of understanding those issues, and early communication should always be happening. And very happy to identify if there's an issue in that area and work on it. I think the light at the end of the tunnel, Paula, is that Cameron Road's Cameron Road Stage 1 at least is not that far away. End of the year, the cone should be gone, and the capacity of that corridor won't be quite 100%. I think that might be more February, but it will be kind of 90-ish. So I think that will be quite a significant positive thing. And of course, B2B is continuously nearing completion. So once again, it's another key bottleneck in the system that hopefully will relieve the network. But understanding the efficiency and effectiveness of our network is an ongoing mission, and its effect on traffic generally, and in particular buses, because of their potential to really make a difference if we can get them free flowing. So certainly from Tauranga's perspective, we're very keen to understand and act and do whatever we can to improve the network. We're always hindered by business case processes and times that takes, and the availability of funding, and that's that wicked problem that you referred to. I'd like to think that we could come up with easy solutions, but the reality is we can't. But I do think we have some light at the end of the tunnel with those two major projects nearing completion.
Thanks, Stephen. Great answer.
Just one last thing to add, sorry, Mr. Chair. Tauranga, the TSP program will have, the Tauranga City Council recently got some more funding for Bluetooth sensors across the transport system here, and that's to help provide a more granular view of how things are happening on the transport system. So I'll take an action to go away about how that information is aggregated, presented, and then we can possibly pull that into it. So I didn't just promise something without something in the pipeline. I think there is something there that we could use, and then we can relate that to how our bus system is operating. And that's a useful operational context for us to have.
Thank you. Stuart, have you got any?
No, that's it, sir.
That's it. So we'll have a recommendation that we receive the report, Public Transport Arataki performance monitoring for the first quarter. And the second one, have you got that on the screen?
I've also said in respect to total mobility and
Yeah, direct staff to conduct an analysis of total mobility service, which highlights costs and benefits of the service. I'm happy to move that. Is there a seconder? Councillor Mays, seconded. Any discussion? All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Was that against councillor Thompson? Okay, carried, thank you. Okay, so that took a little bit of time, but that's well worthwhile. We're going on to a verbal update on the regional council long-term plan. Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Given that our LTP process is still in its gestation period, there's only really a high-level update to really be giving here. So just in first instance, the LTP process will finalise internally in this calendar year and be seeking to go out to public consultation in the first quarter next year, likely to be around March or April. And that's the opportunity for us and everyone to have a commentary on what we do there. But just to hark back to the conversations up until now, what we intend to do is after that process is finalised, we'll have a work programme. And that work programme is something that we'll attach to this committee around the things and activities the staff will do in order to deliver on some of the expectation that gets set here. So what we've been trying to do is to attach these conversations to a list of things to do. And we'll be bringing that back to the sort of the first meeting of the PTC next year. And that'll give you a sense of the priority of our work and our effort. And that priority can be adjusted, changed, and debated here in the committee. Given that we are a general committee, we'd have to make sure we internally we've funded that and we've got all the right delegations. But at the same time, it gives you a sense of what we're working on, but more importantly, what we're not. And I think that's one of the things we're looking to do as part of the staff is to give you a better sense of what's going to get done within a certain time frame than some of these other things. And I think that'll be useful in some of these discussions around priority. So starting after the LTP, we'll be starting to use that as an opportunity to get your view on what's important for us to work on. Because we have a limited resource and limited time, and we'd like to use that as effectively as we can. So that's one of the part of the update. The other element to that is we are sort of moving through that process at the moment, and we hope to give you some more detail around that once our council is able to consider it, assess the impacts of the PT program across the wider Whaingaina program, and that's happening within the next couple of weeks. So there'll be bits of information coming out on more organic channels than this meeting as we go through towards the end of the calendar year. And that's all I really had to talk about with regard to the LTP update.
Any comments, questions? There don't appear to be any. So we'll move straight on to the chairman's report.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just to answer Councillor Shirley's question, for the number of people that didn't make the grade with total mobility, less than 10. So don't know the exact number, but it is of that magnitude.
I don't know whether that's good or bad.
It's about normal over time.
Stuart, you're going to give this report?
Yes, if the chairperson's report can be accepted as read, I can provide some updates and some salient points. The National Ticketing Solution program is still trundling along and making progress and doing well. And as an operations group, we have shaped up our structure to make sure that we can provide the resource and service that needs to make sure that we land that product very well for the Bay of Plenty. You'll be aware that Low Te Rua Bus Network Refresh is on pause at present, as is Tauranga Bus Network Refresh. Looking forward to being able to continue with those at the appropriate time when that unfolds. Tauranga On Demand trial is progressing very well with a contract approval for our technical software provider, and it's been exciting to go through even what the proposed vehicles will look like. After much discussion, they will certainly be a standout in the community and a talking point, which is what we want to see as well. By way of just some more detail and security update, other than what I've already sent out as an update to councillors from from the workshop. Things are progressing well in respect to how security is looking, and our commitment to that remains topical. Recently, there was an assault, a young woman who had got on the bus at Bayfair. Some others had also got on the bus that appeared to be unknown to her. All young people, and she alighted at Durham Street and was set upon and assaulted. We made contact straight away, of course, with the family and the victim, and naturally they were distressed. That occurred at a time when we don't have security on. We don't have security on 24/7, and on every part of the day that they are on. But each time something like this happens, it causes us to reflect, to reassess, and to ask ourselves is what we have appropriate level of cover and visibility, and we continue to be comfortable with where we are at present.
Councillor Neves.
Thank you, Mr Chair. I've got a couple of questions of the report. Firstly, on page 37, we mentioned the CERF funding and the fact that it's going to be backdated to November 2022. This is obviously back pay for drivers, and I was just wondering whether there's any additional cost to the regional council from this, or whether it's all government funding that's helping us with that.
Through you, Mr Chair. There is a cost to council. We've budgeted for it as a well-signalled change in conditions for drivers, but it is funded also, partially funded by the government on this. One of the elements is that it's important for these agreements to be in place so that that funding is guaranteed into the future. And of course, with a potential GPS change, we were concerned that that funding wouldn't be available. So at this stage, we're on track for that, and that funding at the moment is we've been told that it is guaranteed going forward. However, things can change, so we will keep you updated on that. It does require agreement between ourselves, operators of Kotahi, and everybody, including the union. So it's not an easy process to land. So we keep working away at that. But at the stage, that is part of our budgets.
It is quite a long time, back to November 2022. So how are we handling any back pay to people that have ceased to be bus drivers?
Can't answer that question in detail, I'm afraid, but it's a very good one, and we can come back to you on that.
I think that the whole thing is going to be administratively difficult. Anyway, I appreciate learning about that. The next question is with regard to on demand. Can you tell us what existing services will be dropped when the online service goes live?
I can't tell you the numbers, but they are two services in the Tauriko area that service around behind the hospital and the Tauriko Lakes area, particularly because they were finding it difficult to traverse the Tauriko networks. So I'm happy to give you the numbers in a second. I'm sure the team will flip me through a message in a minute.
I'd just like to know what the numbers are of the people that are using those services that are no longer going to be delivered, so that we can then, when we get the report on the on-demand trial, we can actually see, what impact that's going to have.
Yeah, happy to do that. And before we launch the trial, we'll bring I think we got a very clear message. So what are the conditions of success? And that patronage transfer is absolutely one of the pieces of information we'll bring at that point. So it'll be hopefully very clear to council. This is what we had before. This is what the on-demand has provided. Is it a successful service? So we'll come and confirm that with council as a separate item.
Right. And lastly, the procurement strategy that staff are working on, is that something that will come to the PT committee, or is it just solely operational? And I guess my other question is, will this have implications for the LTP?
I think it will come to the PTC for information. It's a Toi Moana procurement strategy agreement with Waka Kotahi. So we are the actors in that strategy. However, I think it's useful to understand, because in order for a procurement strategy to work well, your operating model has to be confirmed and in place. In order for us to write a great procurement strategy, we need to figure out what size of contracts we are going to put onto the market. We're going to have to figure out the question marks around asset conversations, and we're also going to have to figure out what is our path to decarbonisation. All of those question marks need to be known before we can finalise the strategy. So therefore, all those items are of great interest to this committee, and so we'll bring that there as a consideration. But it trucks along in the same sort of truck, so we have to make sure that those things are done first before that happens. But I think from our perspective, it allows us to think about how we plan and design the networks as well, because we may choose not to do such large areas, or there might be a better way of doing things. So this is our opportunity to really review how we do things and perhaps avoid some of the issues we've found associated with PTOM contracts and the way that we run services and the balancing act that we have and the power dynamic between ourselves and the market. And really sort of have a look at what's our best approach with that, and what's best practice around the country and the world in this space. So quite an all-encompassing conversation.
It's going to be very important. And just one supplementary, Mr. Chair, if that's all right. Under the PTOM, are we still locked into 9-year contracts, and will that be part of the procurement strategy?
Through you, Mr. Chair, so the new way of doing things called the Sustainable Public Transport Framework allows us to change that. We have to have good reasons to change it. The reasons that we would use would be enshrined in the procurement strategy. We need to do this a certain way because of the following reasons. And we have to also make sure that our partner in funding and investment is, Waka Kotahi, is comfortable with that as well. So it really is an opportunity to really change the way that we operate if we want to. And we can also go back to the PTOM model. So none of those things are off the table. And we've got to do the work beforehand before we set that procurement strategy in stone.
We have Councillor Thurston followed by Councillor Yes.
Chairman, further to Councillor Neesel's question about the on-demand, I want to give it a real good crack at success, and I don't want to set the on-demand trial up to fail. And as we all know, the market that we are pitching this in South Tauranga is an ageing population. So can staff share with us at some stage? Clearly there's going to need to be an extensive comms strategy built around this, because as Councillor Nees has highlighted, people are going to need to know what services they're going to lose and what services they're going to gain. But there's going to be a huge education process needed, I believe, in terms of the ageing population in particular in that neck of the woods. So could I ask staff to comment, please?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. So, the route that we're looking to remove is Route 51, which is the Place Park Crossing route. There'll be some adjustments to Route 1 and 59 as a result, but so we'll most certainly be talking to everybody on the service, which is 51, and we'll also be promoting the service fairly heavily amongst the catchment that the on-demand trial will be to be undertaken. And it's really important that we launch it and we get that information out there and people know how to use it, because it's a change in the way that you might access a bus. It's not as simple as a B card, but at the same time, the service itself is much more targeted towards the needs of the customers. So it is a little bit like an Uber. And if you can use an Uber, then you're likely to be able to use this. However, that doesn't mean everyone can do that very well. And we'll be looking at what that means for our comms messages. So happy to bring it back. And as I said, when we initiate, or before we actually go out there and do it, we'll come to the committee and talk to you about it. However, I just want to make sure we've got the right timing with our PTC committees next year, so that we do have that opportunity to give you a view on it. If not, we will do something in the meantime. So we're happy to bring that information as soon as it's ready.
Chairman, I envisage something like a card or a magnet that would be on their fridges, which would explain in very simplistic terms how to organise a trip on an on-demand bus service. So, I think I've said what I wanted to say, but I just urge us to have a really strong education program because I don't want to set this up to fail. Thanks so much.
Your points are noted. Councillor Dennis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with what Councillor Nees and Councillor Thurston said, but I think in regard to what I said before, you've already got a system that's set up for an on-demand system in Whakatane under the Waka Eastern Bay, which has grown rapidly from 6 drivers to 13 volunteer drivers. They've had to hire a part-time person to cover the times when those 13 drivers aren't there. They're up to a second vehicle. They're looking at a mobility vehicle. And it seems to have really taken off. They're charging $2.50 from the outskirts of Whakatane, taking the shopping then back. And it's an on-demand system. And I guess what I was looking at, if that has chopped almost in half people using the regular bus service, it's easier, they get more personal help getting on the vehicle. I actually think it might be good if someone was actually take a look at it to see how it's progressed and why it's taken off so successfully. And it could be, I know it'll be different, there's different flavour in Tauranga and other places, but even if you could use a system like that with volunteer drivers for the outlying little communities to get them in, you might find that it actually works really well. And then on your internal one, use paid staff with paid vehicles. I think it's an opportunity to just see how that's going and how it develops. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Look, Councillor Dennis, you're on the same curve as we. The trial is really important to prove how this works and the different elements, payments, the booking of the service, the whole kind of gamut of what an on-demand service looks like. Post that trial, and perhaps beforehand, but post that trial, we'll be able to very easily say whether it would suit a community service like that. So are we looking to the future around those sorts of things? Absolutely. The trial will help us to understand the operational dimension of that and whether it actually would work. And I think you well know that those community services are run on the smell of an oily rag. It's not an oily rag these days, maybe an AA battery. And any kind of administrative burden in that space makes it worse than easier. So, and in much to Councillor Shirley's comments earlier on when we did the community transport forum, is we should be there to facilitate, not overwhelm. So that's the kind of thing that we need to test once the trial is completed. So absolutely that sort of thinking there on, but I think it's once that trial is finished, we'll start to think about those options.
Any further? There've been none.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, just one last thing. The staff have come through and said that they go to retirement villages at least 4 times on my chat here. So I think they're well trained in terms of making sure that our elder population is as well catered for in terms of the on-demand trial, the Tauranga refreshes, and the work that we do. We do a lot of visits into retirement homes, particularly in that catchment for the on-demand, and then through the Tauranga refresh. We do use those as really good opportunities to get that customer feedback. So just wanted to reassure you, we are definitely looking after our elder population.
Thank you. So I'm happy to move that we receive that report. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Campbell. All those in favour, please say aye. It's carried. That's okay. We'll move on to the Bapinti Ferry feasibility study, the final report. There's Oliver's there. And Brock.
Thank you, Chair. Morning all. So I'll just briefly cover off on the main points in the report, and then open things up to discussion and questions. Guess the key purpose of this report is to present a final feasibility study to the committee, to seek its endorsement of the study, and to work out a way forward in terms of the issues of ferries. I note that this feasibility study updates and completes an earlier piece of work that was presented to the committee back in September or June 2022. So this study is gone beyond that study and put in a bit more analysis around different options. So the strategic policy context for the feasibility study is summarised in the report. Obviously, there's references to ferries in UFD and the TSP, and we have a policy around ferries in our regional public transport plan. The feasibility study itself provides quite a bit more detail on the strategic land use and planning and transport planning context for ferries in the Western Bay sub-region, and particularly in the areas envisaged for a ferry service. Importantly, it also compares some critical success factors of ferries operating elsewhere in New Zealand with the context in this sub-region. You'll see that the main body of the feasibility study basically assesses 3 service options for 3 potential route options. The service options are described as do minimum, a basic regular service and a high quality service, and they're quite clearly defined in the report. The different route options are Mokoroa to Tauranga, Mount to Tauranga, and then a combination of the 2 where you do a Mokoroa to the Mount to Tauranga and back. So the capital and operating costs for each of those options are assessed or estimated in the report, and also what it would take to achieve full fare box recovery under 3 different mode share scenarios, the ferry mode share being 5, 20 and 50%. This is for a 2028 scenario, taking into account expected population growth at the time and its impacts on demand. And if you look in your reports and agenda, those outcomes are summarised in the table on page 46 of the agenda. So moving on to the key conclusions from the study, obviously it highlights there are significant cost barriers to ferries, including significant capital investment required in vessels and infrastructure for what is essentially a single origin destination mode. The study also notes that in the short to medium term, it may be more prudent to continue the work already underway on the existing bus-based public transport network, and to see where that goes in terms of reliability and service levels to these areas. It does state that the option of ferry services should be preserved for the future, and it recommends some ongoing monitoring of certain triggers to assess the future viability, being things like the performance of the land-based transport system, future population growth and potential demand in those origin points. So following on from the study report, the study findings, the staff recommendation is that the committee endorses the final study and agrees to defer any further investigations of ferries services until the next round of LTPs in 2027 and that NLTP.
Open, Mayor Denyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Couple of questions. What is the time frame to stand up a do minimum service?
It depends on how quickly the infrastructure can be put in place. So what the study identified is that you would need a degree of infrastructure upgrades at all 3 wharf locations, Omokaroa, Tauranga CBD, and Mount Maunganui. And we would then have to decide how we were going to procure the service and get hold of those vessels. Prior to doing that, we would need to go through the Waka Kotahi business case process, which for a project of this scale is likely to be a significant undertaking. I would imagine it would be at least 3 years.
Because from my reading of it, certainly in Omokaroa, it was suggesting there was no infrastructure upgrade required for the do minimum service, and also note that the Wednesday Challenge ferry service seemed to, albeit it's a slightly different model, but it did seem to function okay with no particular works done, and was set up reasonably quickly.
So through the engagement we had with the stakeholder group, the vision for a ferry service was for something of much larger scale than the small trials that we've seen. So something using much more substantial vessels that have all the facilities that sort of commuters would expect, and those would come with a degree of infrastructure requirement.
Thank you.
Commissioner Selwyn?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the report. I thought it was a useful report and a valuable one to really understand the costs here. And it's certainly thrown a lot more light on the issue than the earlier report we had back in 2022. I think TCC still remains interested in the opportunity for the future of a ferry service, particularly from the Mount to the city and return. But I have to say, when you look at the numbers that are required to enable that to occur, they are scary and frankly both uneconomic and unaffordable, certainly on the paradigm that we have at the moment. So, Chair, I'm happy to move the recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Neves?
Mr. Chair, firstly, I was interested in the data of the forecast users for the network, and I just wondered what sort of market segmentation was done. So it seems to me it was pretty much looking at the commuter market with some sort of possible tourism service, but no numbers given. I just wondered whether staff can provide any information about any further segmentation that might have occurred in the background. For example, I had a conversation with Carol Gordon about the demand or the impact for older people for a ferry service from the Makaroa, for example. So has anything, any consideration been given on market segmentation like that, particularly for the use of a service like this for older people?
I think that the report was working at a fairly high level in terms of the population occupying census area units, and didn't probably delve deeper into the demographics within those census units, but it made an assumption around a walkable or a bikeable catchment, or an area where you can capture a market to use the service, regardless of their age or mobility.
That wasn't looked at. So my other question is, should a commercial operator come along and just decide, actually, I see a market opportunity here and want to run a service, say between Tauranga and Mount Whanganui, for example, in the summer when the cruise ships are there, is there anything that would preclude that happening in the interim?
Not from our point of view. As a regional council, it's, a commercial operator sees a viable proposition and to meet a certain market, which is obviously very seasonal, and you probably don't need to schedule a regular public transport service like we do. By all means.
Right, thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just an additional thing. The report's quite useful in providing an operational context. So that operational context would still be the same for a commercial operator. So they would be considering those things as well. And then they'd be pitching the service at whatever market that they could capture from that. So it does give this committee a view on some of the challenges of just operating ferries overall, and then our lens, which is a passenger transport ferry, on top of it. But quite useful information.
No further discussion?
Second recommendation, Chair.
So it's been moved by.
I'd like to make an amendment.
We will hear your amendment.
So I'll speak to it as a whole thing. The need,
Before you speak to it, we need to hear your amendment and then see if it's right.
of course. So recommendation 3, that the Public Transport Committee agrees to maintain a watching brief on State Highway 2 congestion and consider the potential to set up a due minimum ferry service should peak journey times deteriorate significantly. Otherwise, for any further investigations, etc., as the rest of the recommendation says already.
We have a second for that, or do you want to?
Just a clarification through you, Chair. So the document before you is a feasibility study. If we want to go any further, we would need to do a business case. So just acknowledging the Mayor's comments, we can keep an eye, but then the next step would be a business case process. We couldn't move straight to any sort of implementation. That would still have a very long lead time associated with it and significant financial cost to prepare a business case.
Still looking for a seconder.
Did we not already have a seconder? Are they willing?
No, not, this is the amendment.
Oh, okay, I'll second.
You'll second? Okay, so we've got, so it's been moved and the amendment has been moved and seconded, so we'll, do you want to speak now, Mayor Denyer, on your motion, your amended motion?
Yes, please, Mr. Chairman. The need for a ferry for the commute between Katikati, Winnemokwa and Tauranga and the Mount was highlighted earlier this year when the journeys between those destinations became a 2-hour journey. And the option of a ferry ride became highly attractive. I think that the due minimum option would achieve good patronage and fare box recovery. However, that congestion has since diminished, and the medium-term outlook with the TNL is positive. But we do need to watch for that congestion worsening again, particularly with the online construction of the Amokra Road, State Highway 2 roundabout. That will start in coming months and could turn that road into an absolute mess going forward. I'm comfortable with the overall recommendation to defer. I absolutely acknowledge the points made, including by Commissioner Selwood, that the costs are eye-watering, particularly for the high-quality service, which is why I'm just suggesting potential for the due minimum service. I am concerned that the answer that was given just now about the long lead time, I had hoped that it would be a much shorter, quick setup. But I think it's important we just maintain that option to, if things really go wrong with State Highway 2, that we have an option just to work on a ferry solution. I also note the suggestion that we continue to work with public transport, bus improvements. I absolutely support that, but at the moment there is no, the service is wholly inadequate. It uses the same route as State Highway 2 and all the cars. There's no resilience in that, and there's no immediate indication of when that refresh or work to improve that will go. So with that, look, I just want to keep our options open here. I absolutely recognise the impediments and costs. I think with the roundabout construction, I just want to keep that option open. So that's it. Thanks.
Councillor Shirley.
Thank you, Chairman. Speaking to the amendment, I strongly disagree with it. As a resident of Omokara, I travel that road regularly. I did it this morning, and it's true. We had a crazy situation earlier this year. I was late for some meetings. I think the worst was 2.5 hours, and it was hard to know what was causing it. I think it came down to traffic cones, actually, and as traffic engineers know, once you get a certain density of traffic, a very small hindrance or problem, almost a duck walking across the road, can create a massive congestion and jam, and that's exactly what we had. And I think the point is this, we're struggling to make the buses work. Particularly on Makaroa, I see the empty buses there regularly. If we can't make the buses work, and we're struggling to, or the cost that we're bearing with that, how on earth are we going to afford a ferry service? I'm not against ferries. At Brisbane, they're fantastic, the river ferries, you know, they really are. But it comes back to flexibility and, you know, point-to-point service. And road transport is almost point-to-point. Buses is more flexible, is less flexible. Ferries and trains are a lot less flexible than point-to-point. You know, you have to go to a specific wharf. And I'm not against the trial, and we should keep a watching brief on it. I think all of that's good. That's why I support the substantive motion rather than the amendment. And the other point is, for the last 3 months, my journey has been a breeze. There's no congestion. This morning I came in 25 minutes, no stoppages, not one stoppage the whole way. And that has been the pattern in recent weeks. Now, that's because the road cones have gone away, quite frankly, all those little trips that just cause that trigger of massive congestion. It doesn't take much at a certain density. TNL stage 1 will make a significant improvement, I believe, and then I'm hopeful that stage 2 will be closely behind that and following it. And that will essentially remove the problem and future-proof for a very long time, in my view. So I'm just mindful of the costs of all of this, and let's keep it in the back of our mind. But those costs of a ferry service are just astronomical, and at this stage, I believe, a distraction from actually making the public transport buses work.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a suggestion is a way through this that we simply receive the report and leave it at that. And so that in the eventuality of anything needing this committee to have another look, it could happen, but that, you know, we just simply receive the report.
Through you, Mr. Chair. From a staff perspective, Councillor Thompson, we're looking for some direction. No judgment here, but we're going to offer you a work program in the next committee meeting. We would like to be really focused. So I can understand the desire to make sure that we don't neglect our customer and community's needs on State Highway 2 and from the Mokoro community. And I think that's perhaps the heart of the problem, which is how do we make sure that our customers, when a very unreliable piece of network goes off, is there anything that we can do in response? And I think perhaps that's the problem statement here, rather than whether we should have a ferry or not. And I think there's two other dimensions here, which is the team are working with Whakawataya on the revocation of State Highway 2 once stage 1 is put in place. You start to have a lot more capacity on the corridor to do things. We also have a Western Bay of Plenty refresh, which would include the Mokoro service program for next year, as long as we travel through the LTP in the right way, or in the way that it enables that. So there's an opportunity then to look at that service and make it more reflective of customers' needs. And so there are cards to play in the shorter term that can assist our customers on that. It's part of the system as well. So I would like to see a more definitive position rather than just leave the report on the table, if at all possible.
Councillor Lees, followed by Councillor Dennis.
I acknowledge that any further consideration of a ferry service would require a business case, as is suggested, but I still do not see that there is any harm in maintaining or having a recommendation to keep a watch and brief on the congestion and reconsider whether it's something that should be looked at again, should the congestion on that route increase substantially. So my support of the amendment still stands, and I think we should put that as a possible amendment and then see if it stands or falls. It's not actually about if the congestion increases, we'll go to a minimum ferry service. It just says that perhaps we will relook at it again if there is further consideration warranted by a lack of service on for people that want to use public transport between Omokoro and Tauranga. Should the congestion on the state highway increase and it becomes incredibly difficult for people to make that journey to Tauranga. So I still support the amendment and I would like it to be put to the meeting. Thank you.
Councillor Dennis, followed by Councillor Thurston.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's just, I confer with what Mayor Dinya, Councillor Neves and Councillor Thompson are saying, but isn't there concerns to put the thing on hold until we can see what the traffic congestion is going to be in the future? Isn't that covered through recommendation 3? Because recommendation 3 says to defer any further investigations until the development of long-term plans in the National Land Transport Program.
I think the issue is concern that next year there may be a lot of congestion on that route and waiting until 2027 potentially will not meet the needs of the community. Is that right?
Councillor Thurston.
Chairman, I'd just like to remind us all that, we've spent all morning so far trying to promote existing bus travel based around public transport and buses. I hear where his worship is coming from, and I do believe we do need to preserve the option for future ferry services going forward. But the ferry services have featured in long-term plans for as long as I can recall in other transport strategies. But as the Honourable Ken Shirley has said, there's huge cost barriers here. And if the trigger is going to be congestion on State Highway 2 that triggers it, then so be it. But I do believe our first and prime objective is to promote public transport and the use of our buses. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Councillor Shirley.
Conscious I'm having a second comment, but I do, and I was going to plead my case in that regard, Chairman, in that Councillor Thompson actually suggested an amendment to the amendment in a way by having it lie on the table. So I just like to address that, and I make the comment that, and I take the point what the staff have said, that they're seeking direction. And I think the worst decision any governing body can make is a non-decision. That's, in my view, dysfunctional. So, we want a clear decision and clear direction. And the other point I'd make is that the amendment moved, I think, was unnecessary in the sense that we can always revisit it. And I'm sure if the congestions get back to where it was, the public will let us know. We will be aware of it. So with that it's never precluded. There is always an option open to you to review it in the future in a situation that may occur. And on current trends and indication, it appear that it's been corrected. It's going to be significantly better with the TNL, the Takitimu North Links, stage 1 and 2. So we're not precluding that option. That always rides with us. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you. So we have an amendment, and then you're right, Councillor Thompson wanted to make an amendment to the amendment. Who gets the first crack at it?
It was a mover and a seconder for the first.
Yeah, and then an amendment, but then there's a suggestion of an amendment to the amendment before it was put.
Chairman,
The normal procedure in business is that the mover amendment has the last speaking rights, and the amendment to an amendment has the second to last speaking rights. So that's the normal sort of procedure as I understand it.
And Chairman, a further point of order, isn't Councillor Thompson actually giving notice that if this amendment fails, she's got another one coming down the pipeline?
Well, can you clarify that, Councillor Thompson.
No, look, I withdraw my suggestion. I take on board everything that's been said, and I absolutely agree with Councillor Shirley that nothing would stop us revisiting this particular issue, either by way of staff report or notice of motion. So I'm happy that there are mechanisms available to us to be able to revisit if this, in fact, the proposed initial resolution goes through. Thank you.
Just remind me, anybody who knows, does, on an amendment, does the mover of the amendment get a right of reply?
It's been withdrawn, so I understand, Jim.
No, not the amendment of the amendment's been withdrawn, but he does?
The member of the original motion, they exercise the right to reply.
That's the original motion.
Oh, not the original amendment.
For the substantive motion.
Yeah. That's the amendment.
My understanding, Chairman, is that once an amendment is proposed and it needs a seconder to be debated, and we had a seconder.
Yep.
And then you should open up for discussion around the table, and then the mover of the amendment has the final speaking right as also a right of reply.
And if it passes.
But in this instance, Mayor Daniel went off first, and I'd be happy for him to have a right reply as well in this situation.
Keep it short.
It absolutely will be. Look, I think hearing the views around the table, I think we're sort of dancing on the head of a pin here. We're actually in agreement. I think my amendment achieves some highlighting or visibility on the issue for the public as much as anything else. I accept that what Councillor Shirley and what Councillor Thompson have said in that nothing precludes us from revisiting it again. And I'm happy that, you know, if I lose the amendment, it's not the end of the world. We can revisit it if necessary. It just highlights that our committee has thought about this and is aware and expresses concern about the potential for the congestion in the future, that's all.
Can you give us the exact wording of your amendment?
Of course. That the Public Transport Committee agrees to maintain a watching brief on State Highway 2 congestion and consider the potential to set up a due minimum ferry service should peak journey times deteriorate significantly. Otherwise, defer any further investigations into Tauranga and Western Bay of Plenty ferry services until the development of 2027 long-term plans and the 2730 NLTP.
So the Public Transport Committee agrees to maintain a watching brief on State Highway 2 congestion and consider the potential to set up a due minimum ferry service should the
Peak journey times deteriorate significantly. Otherwise, defer any further investigations, etc., etc.
So we're all clear on what the, have you got that?
I'm just going to put it on the screen.
It's gonna go on the screen.
Why don't you refine it during the morning tea break, Chairman?
No, because we're gonna get this cleaned up before we have the morning tea break. Yeah, well. There's a bit of that around the room, Councillor Thurston. What's that? You put your speak on.
It's just adding clarity around deteriorate significantly.
Does the committee want further clarity on that? I mean, I was happy to keep it open.
So that it's been brought up that the word otherwise should be replaced by and.
No, because Anne says we are deferring it, whereas otherwise says we might not.
We'll put it as it stands here. It's been moved and seconded as an amendment. All in favour, please say aye. Against?
Ian,
Can I have a show of hands, please? For it? 3 for it, against?
For
There were, and this is against now? So that's 3, 4. Were you against or for?
I'm made up, I know what I'm. I really don't.
For or against the amendment?
Oh, I see, against the amendment. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with the original.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so it fails, so that we revert to the original wording. And which was moved by councillor Selwood, seconded by, can't remember that. Councillor Campbell, all in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. We'll stop for quarter of an hour for morning tea. There's food and drinks at the back of the room. We'll meet again at 25 past. We're back at it and we're on to page 118. We're on page 118, Public Transport Joint Committee minutes. So that's just a report of the minutes.
To cover this one.
So the minutes are just for receiving, so I'm happy to move that we receive the report. Do I have a seconder? Seconder, Commissioner Selwood. All in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Any discussion? There being none, we move into public excluded. Can I have our mover and seconder to move us into, Councillor Dennis moves. I'll second. All in favour, please say aye.